presentation about the Forecasting Using Data workshop. This workshop is run by Focus Objective and it aims to leave people with the ability and understanding of probabilistic forecasting and how to use data in everyday software development projects. The goals are simple. It's a one-day practical workshop that aims to leave people with the tools and the understanding of those tools that they can immediately use solving their real-world problems in the software development space. There are 5 basic themes of the training. The first one is data capture and analysis. Then we move on to forecasting and look at how risk impacts forecasting before we move on to planning multiple projects and teams, portfolios and dependency management. Very key issues that we need to understand. We look at how to assess team skills and how to understand how to increase capacity over time. And then we end with looking at dashboards and team metrics which help the teams progressively improve their forecasting reliability over time. We also look at what metrics not to use. Let's go through each of these areas in a little bit more detail. The first section about data capture aims to leave people with the ability to look at data, understand how to detect outliers that might overly influence a forecast, and how to detect whether they should rely on the data they're given with some simple fraud detection techniques. We're not looking for fraud, we're just looking for overly human tailored data. We're looking for data that hasn't come out of a system. We look at how much data is needed and we learn that it's much less than you probably think when you join the day. And then we look at how to use simple sampling techniques that's used in biology to understand how many fish are in a pond. We can use the same technique for understanding how many defects remain in a code base. We also look at how to use sampling to work out what's the total story count with multiple features in epics without having to break down every single epic, a very time-consuming process. We do lots of exercise in this area because it really is the foundations for the rest of the day. We need people to intuitively understand what data to capture and why, and how much data to capture before they should be certain. And the tools we use are, we introduce really a basic sampling, a basic statistics spreadsheet that we have, which allows you to paste your data in, intentionally identify and deal with outliers, to intentionally look at the pattern of that data and determine if it's been generated by a system, and look at ways of understanding whether we have a belief that this data represents the system we're looking at. We also then look at some other spreadsheets around sampling, this one being latent defect estimation. It's a very simple process of getting 2 different groups of people to test in isolation. And by understanding how much overlap there is in their results, we can go on the record with an estimate of how many defects remain undiscovered. This often helps us decide whether we should release a beta product earlier or not. The second theme, forecasting, pretty much why a lot of people join the day. We look at how to use probabilistic forecasting techniques which allow us to get a bit more certain than on average how long it will take to do a piece of work or how many stories might get done over a period of time, both important forecasting jobs. We look at risks. We look at risks like performance regressions, the system not running fast enough, requiring us to do extra work. We look at things like browser compatibility, risks that may not occur, but if they do occur, have a very large impact on violating the delivery expectation. We'll understand how to talk to teams and get them to volunteer this information, and we'll look at how to integrate those risks into a standard sort of Monte Carlo forecasting tool. Again, lots of exercises. We believe that once you've done this by hand once, you'll really understand why this technique will work in the real world, and more importantly, when it won't. So the tools we use here, we have a single throughput or velocity forecasting tool. It allows you to sort of start off with range estimates until real data becomes available. And again, it does the 2 core basic competencies, forecasting outer duration and also forecasting how many stories might be completed in a period of time. This has built-in sort of risk analysis tools, which we'll go throughout the day. Then we move on to how to do that with a portfolio, multiple projects and features that a team might be looking at delivering. Again, this is more about, it's the same as the other tool, except it can do multiple features and projects in a sequential order. And what we're looking at here is how to have the conversation about what's the correct start order, what's the correct prioritization. So this spreadsheet helps us frame a conversation with the stakeholders that you have a great chance of the first feature 1, 2, and 3 being delivered, not so much about getting feature 5. Would you like to trade one of the other features for feature 5? Portfolio planning is where we start to deal with a whole organization's integrated plan. Often it takes more than a single team to deliver a feature, and we start looking at detail about how cross-team dependencies might impact forecasting. We also look at how we might develop the skill sets and capabilities in an organization over time to allow them to break those dependency deadlocks and deliver more consistently. The tools we're using here is a very simple tool which helps you map out what teams are involved in delivering certain features and show when one particular team or skill set is overburdened. And what we will realize is that even though we have a lot of capacity in our whole organization, once we hit capacity in a certain skill or team set, a constraint in a system, it doesn't really matter what else we add. It's at risk. And we look at how we might manipulate start date and start order to minimize these overwhelming allocations of certain teams and individuals and get a more smooth, balanced flow over time. It's where we start teaching the stakeholders that up to this point we can deliver. It's not about having every team at full utilization. It's about understanding where your constraint in your system is and planning to that level. To do that, we also talk about, we go through about 14 different techniques for calculating cost of delay. Now, we know very well that it can be very difficult putting a dollar value on items in a portfolio or a backlog. So we look at alternatives, simple ways of getting close to a more optimal start order of work to minimize the costs of delay if an item's not being done. Whenever we choose to do something, we choose to delay others. What this section is about is quantifying the impact of delaying those items. Now, this section is probably new and it's to many groups and companies. It's about doing a quick survey across your organization to understand what skill capabilities you have. And more importantly, what proficiency you have in the organization. Now, if you want to open up options of being able to create a second team to do more work, you're going to need senior people, at least 2 senior people, so that you can split a senior person with each team. What we're looking at in forecasting using data is understanding that this is a very key piece of information to have. You want to know your options for being able to increase capacity, and you want to know in advance that a capability is going to be needed more in the future and grow the organization in that direction. So we go through a couple of simple spreadsheets here about doing very simple surveys of the team to give you a general heat map about whether you've got enough teacher level people, whether you've got enough novice and learner level people to give you options in the future to be able to do the features that you're going to do next year. So we believe that this is a very core issue that exists in many large organizations. They don't pay enough attention to the types of skills they're going to need in the future and have a plan for building and generating those skills in advance. And the last section of the day is about how to give the team the data it needs to learn and thrive. And what we learn is that if the moment that you make a target on a metric, an organization will move to meet that metric, often at the decimation of every other metric. So we look at how to build a balanced team dashboard. Now we give one to start with. It's a very simple dashboard, which is just driven off start date, complete date, and work type. And it gives you 70 odd different charts to choose from. And what we help you during the day, the exercises is about choosing which of those 17 work for your organization in each of these 4 different areas. How well, how fast, how much, and how repeatable. We want a metric in each of these areas so that we can set the teams up to make a smart trade of something they're good at for something they want to improve. And it's about helping teams to understand the trade-off between these metrics that allows them to actually make good decisions about what they want to improve and what parts of the process most benefit improvement. Now, throughout the day, we give you access to a huge folder and repository of digital material that you can use. There's over 15 sort of spreadsheets that we go throughout the day, and there's over 10 of these single page cheat sheets, we call them. And the idea is that they introduce you during the day to a specific topic, but they're also available for you to hand out in your organization to make sure that there are other people who understand the techniques and the process that you're using. So whenever we actually go through a piece of a technique, there'll be an equivalent cheat sheet that you can take away with you. We also give you all copies of PDFs, of books that we've written and presentations that we've given, and also a pretty sophisticated application which allows you to simulate a Kanban process or a Scrum process to understand it in more detail. Now, we only really cover that tool in the advanced workshop, but we make it available to anyone who takes the forecasting using data workshop so you can get started with it. Now, the advice if you do choose to attend, it goes much better if you bring your own data. You can use it throughout the day in the exercises and actually get our advice about how best to utilize it. Now, if you bring your own laptop, it's much more fun if you're using your own laptop to follow along doing real work in real context with your, so that you actually leave the day having achieved something. Now, you can just follow along with the exercises. We do a lot on paper. We do a lot with dice. But if you have your own laptop, you'll be able to start populating those spreadsheets with your actual projects and teams and getting a real contextual feel for how to use them in your organization. Which brings us along to try and talk someone else into your organization coming along. If you have someone to talk to about your specific challenges throughout the day, it makes the exercises much more specific to your challenges, and it also gives you another ally when you go back to your company who understands how to forecast using data and the techniques we're talking about. So bring them along. And don't wait to the course to download the data. Bitly, forecasting using data, capital F, capital U, capital D. You can download all the digital materials and get a head start about understanding what you need to do. If you have any other details that you need to know or questions, just email me directly, troy.mcginnis@focusobjective.com. I'm also available on Twitter, which gives you access to the public and private trainings we're going to be running, and all the materials that we ever produce, we release under Creative Commons for everyone to use. So that gives you a bit of a rundown of the Forecasting Using Data workshop. I hope to see you at one soon, and look forward to talking to you then.